Imagine Socrates and a slave boy. Imagine you being in ancient Greece and observing a conversation between the slave boy and Socrates. Imagine Socrates trying to teach the kid about math, and imagine Socrates and the boy drawing in the dirt to be able to map mathematical equations and geometrical shapes, with the boy unable to figure out the answer to the problem. And imagine that they keep trying and they're having no luck and they're unable to figure out the answer. And then suddenly the slave boy knows what the answer is. Is this an idea? Is this the idea? The ideas? Is it innate ideas? I guess we will see. Hey, what's up? It's Phoenix and welcome back to my channel. I encourage you to hit that like button and to subscribe for more quality content from Phoenix. Welcome back to my Philosopher series, and I enjoy having you. Let's make 2020 the best year that it can be. Today, I'm going to talk about Plato, and I'm going to talk about the forms, specifically with Plato, and you might be wondering what the forms are and what the ideas are. And that is a very valid question. Now, the way that I would describe specifically the ideas, or also called the forms, is by hearkening back a little bit to the allegory of the cave, which I talked about in a previous video. I encourage you to check that out in my Philosopher series. Be sure to check the playlist tab for that. And I definitely encourage you to think about the idea of contemplation as being the thing that can give us a kind of enlightenment or understanding of the world, and that can help us understand deeper context and content and deeper understandings of the world itself. Now, as you may remember, Plato is a very abstract thinker, and he often focuses on appearances versus reality, where things appear to be a certain way, but that is not necessarily reality as it is. And forms are a good analysis of this idea. So imagine that you have a chair, and there is the chair in the real world. But imagine that this chair is only one manifestation or representation of a higher form, perhaps called a chair, and this ultimate chair is abstracted, and this is the way that all chairs can be. Now, it might seem like an innocuous example, but there's actually a lot of profundity in these ideas, because you realize that there is a higher notion of a chair, or of a television, or of a couch, or of something else, and you realize that these ideas are much more complicated than we can ever know. The best way to describe the form is by thinking about how the abstracted chair is the ultimate form. And remember when I talked about essence, remember that essence is the notion of what something really is. And so Plato, who was often thinking about universals of which can be defined as what something is, or the essence of a thing, or in the case of the form, the universal is that higher chair, so to speak, the abstracted perfect chair. And you will remember that these are the concepts that Plato often utilizes, and with thinking about what is ultimate and what is really reality. And you could also use the term, as I have said, universal. And so, what are these concepts? Well, they often relate to not just physical objects in the world, but also many notions of what reality is. So, with thinking about truth, beauty, aesthetics, life, existence, often these are forms of much more complicated and probably mundane things in the world. All of which is a complicated picture of how things can be. You might remember that I opened up this video with a story talking about a slave boy and Socrates trying to get at the truth of the world, and math would be another example of the forms. So geometry is actually a good example of the form. So we have a shape in reality that corresponds to a much more perfect geometrical shape in the abstract realm. And you might be wondering what the ideas represent in this story, and that is a very valid question. I would describe it as the slave boy being able to get the innate idea, the form of what something is, of what the answer is, the solution of what is possible. And indeed, some of these ideas are innate. Imagine how exciting of an idea that is to assume that you can know things just by contemplation, as we have talked about, but also simply by thinking about them in the context of a greater reality. And it is exciting to think about how ideas can be innate, that we already know the answers to a lot of these things. Often this is what the Socratic Method often incorporated, which was the notion that you could come to true knowledge and come to amazing conclusions by way of thinking through things, by way of thinking about the form of those things or the essence or the universal. And we can understand these things in a deeper way than we might assume that we would be able to. And so the reason why I utilize the story in the dialogue Meno by Plato is because it helps capture the essence of some of these ideas, that you can know things very deeply, that you don't have to have the answer given to you, that you don't even have to use empirical knowledge, or rather knowledge that we see in the world, and that we gather from the world, which is often what science does, and that we don't have to do that. And that is a pretty remarkable thing. You might be wondering how these concepts influence me and my life, and again, I am very stoked about ideas of something being more real than we could ever know, and I definitely like thinking about the notion that there could be a more perfect reality than we are necessarily used to. And as you will find out in later philosophy, specifically in the Middle Ages, the ideas of the forms really influenced Christianity with thinking about basically heaven and a more perfect world. Plato specifically was more thinking about many different concepts related to universals and problems in philosophy, and he was also thinking of things such as virtue, because as you know, Socrates himself was thinking a lot about virtue and what that represents. And so I find a lot of excitement in these ideas with thinking about what is possible and how we can really truly know what is there and what exists. I hope that you enjoyed this discussion, and I hope that you find it valuable. Definitely subscribe for more quality content, and I will be making more quality content for my Philosopher series. I encourage you to check out the other videos, and I will see you around. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.